One. I'm Dr. Marie Flore Lindor Latortue. I am very pleased to have you and the world that we see that forum entitled, What Does It Mean to Be a Progressive? Granted, this is round 2. You said it. Thanks to the Labor Community Alliance under the leadership of Lorenzo Canizares, we brought you a successful Forum 1. These forums are designed for us to really enhance the messaging as fellow Democrats. In round 2 today, we will go and put millennials in honor, where they will share their passion as it relates to climate change, housing, social issues. Are you ready for a great night? We are all with you. I'm Dr. Marie Flore Lindor Latortue. I serve as the education chair for the Labor Community Alliance. Greetings. Without any further ado, we will take a minute that will be led by our dear member, Ed Cook.
Our treasurer.
Call that minute a minute of meditation. Take it away, Ed.
Interestingly, as we begin this night together, this is 6 months since our co-founder, our great model before us, Jack Lieberman, left us for life. And we have promises to keep. He stood 6'3" tall, will never be as tall as he, but we can begin to fill his shoes. He was, for those who meet him, he was a jolly, he called himself Jolly Jack. He liked being called Radical Jack. He liked being called Jack the Activist Prophet. And he inspired all of us in some way through meetings. He especially attended a lot of meetings. One of us may be part of 1 or 2 meetings, but he was part of the LCA, founded it. He was the guardian angel of the 350.org, showed up at every meeting. The Haitian women elected him in their formative years against gentrification. He was at every Democrat meeting. He went whenever President Trump was up there in Palm Beach. He went 2.5 hours each way just to be seen above the crowd saying, leave, stop. Any rally, any protest, Jack Lieberman was there. And he's an inspiration to us, a motivation to us to say, hey, we need to be doing that. That's what we're here tonight to do. We're going to look at 3 segments of his participation. You will look at housing, and we'll be motivated hearing about 18,000 people are about to be evicted in Dade County, 6,000 of them above 65 years old. We have to be inspired to do something for them. We're going to hear about climate evolution. We'll hear a lot of esoteric things about climate retention, climate capture, and we'll be hearing even things like plant a victory garden, everybody have a vegetable garden to participate in some way. We're going to hear also in the 3rd segment, which he was very much a model to us, was any burning issue, any social issue. That you are going to hear about a bill before the Florida legislature now, where 42,000 people, as we talk, are without electricity. You will hear, you might not have known it, in this year, almost 500,000, 400,000 people have lost their electricity and had to pay a fee to be reconnected. These are moments that you're going to be in a meeting. Get them, work up your energy to be inspired, to be motivated, and in your way, in many ways, let's fill our promises to Jack Lieberman, and let's fill his shoes. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Ed. For those of you participants who are not affected by the time change, you can text a friend and send the ID to them and also the passcode and have them be part of the conversation. Now, our chairman, Lorenzo Canizares, as protocol requires, will have the welcoming remarks. Chairman?
Thanks God for protocols. So I can talk. By the way, I am co-chair. The other co-chair is over there with their earphones.
The host.
Yeah, the host. By the way, those were very nice words. Very nice. The Labor Community Alliance, South Florida, as many of you know, is an organization that was built to fight for issues that affect people directly. Now, through the years, we have been in existence for 6 years, and I don't know if I'm preaching here to the choir that everybody knows about the Labor Community Alliance, but in any case, let's remember that in the 6 years that we have been in existence, basically the main effort has been into push the needle forward, and that has kind of become our motto. We believe that whatever effort we get involved in, the goal is to push the needle forward. Now, one major thing that I want to convey is that we are basically a very much common people type of organization, common folks. We are not people that claim to be in the leadership of, even though we have people like Nancy, who is elected officials, but Nancy has shown us that she is a true representative of the people, and she and that's what we want to be. That's what we want to be. We believe the power is in people like us. Get that clear. The power is in people like us. We are the one that move the world, and we are more much powerful when we are together. When we are, of course, there are going to be differences, and differences are great because from those differences we grow. But the most important thing is to make sure that we fight to be cohesive. One of the reasons that President Biden has been so successful in his first 60-something days has been exactly that he has been able to combine the input of the different sectors of the party in order to make it move forward. And I just don't relate to just the Democratic Party, because that's a concept that basically needs to be expanded to the whole sphere. To conclude, we do work inside of the Democratic Party. Nucleus and I just came out, and Janice, I don't know if Janice is in the crowd or here already, but she's coming. We just came from the Democratic Party Labor Caucus meeting. We are part of the Democratic Party, but we also have a very independent attitude in terms of what we want to push forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and let's have a wonderful meeting. We have great people, and Dr. Flore, Lindor, Latortue have put together an amazing group of people, young people that will do great work for now and in the future.
Thank you, Chairman. When we say stronger together, we have to measure it. And the way we measure it with LCA, it's exactly with that demonstration through the forum. No one can do it alone. And today our partner is 350 organization. As we continue the legacy of Jack Lieberman, we are very pleased to bring a leader that will tell us briefly about what 350 has been doing, what they stand for. Nicole Lavelle, please share with us the reason why you decided to partner on this journey with LCA.
Thank you, Dr. Flore, and thank you for having 350 South Florida being a part of this amazing forum of progressives. And thank you, Ed, for those beautiful words towards Jack Lieberman, that we will forever have him present, and we miss him every day, and he's paved the way for us to continue. I'm part of 350. I'm here representing. 350 is a climate advocacy nonprofit. We are an international movement of ordinary people taking direct hands-on action to end the age of fossil fuels and build a world of community-led renewable energy for all through climate justice. So now I will introduce our first speaker, Commissioner Nancy Metayer. She is a long-time resident of Coral Springs, and she serves as the city's first Black and Haitian American woman commissioner. Matayer is an environmental scientist and former member of the Broward County Soil and Water Conservation District. She has undertaken work across multiple government agency and nonprofit organizations, where she brought long-term strategic expertise to programs seeking to improve environmental conditions, water, sanitation, and public health. Thank you for joining us, Nancy.
We also have tonight Nucleus Shelton. Nucleus Shelton is a graduate with a major of political science in 2015, proud member of Labor Community Alliance. He is still a student of the American Labor Movement, a member at large with Miami-Dade County People Progressive Caucus, with the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, South Florida Chapter Marketing and Youth Professional Chairs. Nucleus is a role model, a passionate. When you're gonna listen to him today, you need to have his contact information. Now I turn it over to Juan Godoy that will give us the biography of our next panelist.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we also gonna have the presence. I mean, we're very honored to have Nancy and Nucleus and people like our next person that I'm gonna tell you a little bit about. That's Angel Montabo. He's a Miami-based farmer and organizer. He's a member of the Miami-Dade County Democratic Executive Committee, as well as a member at large of the board of the People's Progressive Caucus of Miami-Dade. His focus is to align public service with the will of the people. That's pretty good. After completing the Rock Valley Farm Co-op's internship in 2018, Angel has since adopted a community-based approach to equitably address the threats of climate and ecological devastation and developing autonomous and local food systems in Miami. He volunteers with community gardens and works with urban oasis farmers market to provide local and accessible food for all. And I will turn it to Danielle, and that's going to be presenting Mari Flore, that's going to be telling us some more about Danielle Robinson.
When you spell the word team, T-E-A-M, that's 4 letters. Then that's why we chose to have 4 panelists. And last member will be Danielle Robinson. She's a Caribbean who moved to the US in 2009. Her parents, mother, cosmetologist, her father, a trade and a sales car. Then she did not have life easy. Then that's why, and with 2008 crisis, her parents also got separated. But she really continued to work to raise Danielle. Then Danielle uses those experiences of her childhood to really be a leader. And as we celebrate also women equality this week, she is the right speaker for us, as she is very concerned and passionate on issues pertaining to economics, education, gender, and race. 4 great panelists. Then let's get going. Bill Gates, in his recent book, How to Avoid Climate Disaster, define climate change as a global challenge. The questions tonight is for all 4 panelists, and we will start with Commissioner Metayer. You have no more than 2 minutes, and your perspective of that definition of Bill Gates. Is climate change a global challenge? If so, why?
First and foremost, I want to say thank you all for having me. Yes, Bill Gates, climate change is a global issue, and it will become more and more of an issue economically, and it will touch every aspect of our lives if we don't address it now. And I say all of that to say, people can't touch climate change, but they can feel the effects, right? So it's so important for us when we talk about global warming, when we talk about climate change, that we connect it to folks' everyday life. I think Bill Gates was onto something when he says climate change is an issue that will continue to spiral if we don't address it now. Now we have the opportunity to do that. We no longer can mitigate climate change. We have to start adapting to climate change. And what does that mean? That means shifting to 100% renewable energies, implementing policies that are going to protect our environment, and I'll ensure that everyone is able to live in a safe and healthy community. Until we reach those thresholds and meet metrics that are pushing us and shifting us from our dependency of fossil fuels, our communities are going to continue to hurt. We're going to see the issues of migration become worse and worse. We're going to see the issues around water scarcity is going to become more and more of an issue. And we're seeing that now. We're going to see affordable housing continue to be non-existent. It's just a threat multiplier. So it's so important that we continue having these conversations, we continue work towards solution and not talk about the issues, but really ensure that our communities are empowering themselves and are giving the tools for them to be resilient so they can combat climate change and global warming.
Nucleus, what is your take on that?
Yes, Dr. DeFore, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I'm having some connection issues with my Wi-Fi.
Very good. Bill Gates published his recent book, entitled How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And he went and referred climate change to a global challenge. What is your take on his definition?
I would agree. I think the administration, the prior administration pulling out of the Paris Accords and a global effort to try to get a grip on the current climate crisis speaks volumes. You know, I think that it's really going to take not one individual state actor to step up to ensure that we can properly tackle this crisis that's before us. So I do think that there is a utilitarian approach to this particular issue where, individual actors have to come to the table in order to collaboratively address this crisis. So I'm of the vein that, there's shared responsibility. There are folks who, free ride off of, folks that do have regulations around carbon emissions, around different ways that we contribute to the current crisis. And there are people who don't want to do anything and wipe their hands completely free of it. And, look to more developed countries to take the role in addressing the crisis. So I think that it's extremely important that each individual actor understand the role that they play within this bigger picture. Because if we don't, I think that, as Commissioner Matayer eloquently, said, it's gonna be a slippery slope. It's gonna lead to disastrous situations, and we in South Florida, y'all. So this is ground zero in terms of we all gonna have beachfronts soon, and it's very scary to think about. But I think that it's gonna take a collaborative effort. And I would agree what Mr. Gates, mentioned about the current climate crisis.
Danielle?
Mm-hmm.
Danielle Robinson, what is your take on that as well?
Yes, it's absolutely, definitely a global crisis. Being from the Caribbean, going home a few years ago, I think it was 2017, and going to the beaches that I used to go to growing up and seeing how little beach is actually left, the effects of sea level rise and all of those things that are coming to a head now in this century, and that will only get worse. It definitely is a real issue, and it definitely is a global issue affecting every country. And something that I think that makes this such a huge issue is how baked in it is into every aspect of our lives. And it definitely takes a re-envisioning of almost every aspect of our lives, from, where our clothes are being made, how they're being made, where food is being made, how that's being distributed, how our buildings are functioning, the amount of energy that goes into shipping things all around the world, the amount of energy that goes into producing basic things nowadays. It all contributes. And if you look at the largest industries contributing to climate change, it is the agriculture and transportation sector. So it's not necessarily residential people turning off their lights. It's not necessarily about how much water you're using when you're taking a shower. It's the energy sector, the transportation sector, and how we're distributing our things. So, something that I think is really great that you mentioned Angel Montalvo is involved with is, food independence, bringing these things more locally, really considering where our things are coming from, how they're being made, and how they're affecting the environment. So I do believe that we do need to have a global approach to it, but we also have to understand that, a handful of countries are responsible for the vast majority of emissions that are taking place, causing this climate change. And so they may have a larger portion of responsibility in stepping those things back, scaling those things back. And a lot of equatorial countries, smaller countries, less consumption countries, they're bearing the brunt of it. And so when we look at the global response, we do have a handful of countries that really do need to step up and change the way that their economies are working and that their production and consumption patterns are contributing. So I totally agree that it's a global problem, and it's every aspect of our lives have to be, reevaluated.
Angel Montalvo, your
Hi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is really excited. Danielle, you gave me a perfect little intro to what I'm doing. Like they mentioned, I'm really involved with food, agriculture. I sell food for produce for a living, and I'm also involved with like food sovereignty, and that's something that we don't necessarily think about a lot. But so something I want to say curiously about Bill Gates, yes, the climate crisis is definitely being, like, agriculture is a huge issue, you know, and we have to think about it in the context with like multinational corporations. Like, it's really unfair to blame individuals when it comes to climate. And so particularly when we're talking about food production, I think it's curious that you mentioned Bill Gates, because and I would recommend everybody look into this, the relationships between like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Monsanto, which is a notorious GM company, and agribusiness commodity giant Cargill. So one of the things about these like multinational corporations, especially when we're talking about like industrial, you know, industrial production, not just of food, but just generally, like clothing is an agricultural product. You know, we have to think about these things, and like tables are an agricultural product in a sense. And so the trick is, if we want to have like successful, like sustainable programs, we really need to start like developing it in our communities. You know, there's somebody that I would highly recommend everybody look into her. She's probably like the most important person in my mind for how I think about like food sovereignty, and her name is Vandana Shiva. And I think her approach, understanding like, why don't we have a garden in every single public school that we have? Why don't we start to develop these skills and knowledge in people, especially young people? And and then just the last thing, when I did my internship, part of my internship was I would do farm tours and would show children about like food that's grown. And something that we all really need to consider is the fact that a lot of these kids would be like, oh, tomatoes are grown on a plant, you know? So this kind of disconnect that our culture has, we don't see how much harm industrial agriculture is causing, because for the most part, it's in places like India where they produce a good amount of food, but their people are starving, you know? So it's really important to understand that there's a global mechanism, and we need to address it on a global scale in order to have like successful, you know, and that's just one example. You know, you can put that into all of them. So thank you.
And for those of you who are not able to be with us tonight because it is recorded, as you can see, Commissioner Matayer said that yes, she does agree with Bill Gates. Then because the issue of climate change is part of all aspects of our life. But she stated that we need to learn how to adapt, how to implement policies, and find and build safe communities using metrics. As it comes to our leader Nucleus, he also agrees with Bill Gates, but he's telling you straightforward, some leaders do not want to do anything. Then he's telling you about the bigger picture. If we don't, yes, indeed, it will be a disaster. And he specifically mentioned the state of Florida, where we are having that forum. Danielle, on the other hand, did a comparison with the Caribbean. Every time she goes on vacation, she sees her country being different. The sea level rise, and all three of them concurred that the issue of climate change is a challenge and it's real. She says that we need to re-envision and not only nature, but see it from the perspective of the agriculture, transportation, energy, and how we distribute things, food, clothes. Angel, an expert in food programs, mainly food salvatory, brings you to think about the multi-natural corporation, the big industry, the industrial aspect. He said for you to think of success, he brings you to the schools, that each child needs to love a plant and know how to have a garden. Guys, thank you for your information. Now I turn it over to you, Nicole, for your question to all panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Flore, and thank you, everybody, for your informative answers. So a question from 350 from a climate perspective is, what is the relationship between intersectionality and climate justice? And how do we see these concepts unfolding in our communities?
Angel, you want to start and answer this first?
Sure, I'll take a swing at it. Thank you again. So climate is the intersection of every single issue. It has to do with racism, it has to do with sexism, it's immigration, all of it into one. And it basically exacerbates the already, injustices and inequities that we experience right now. Bringing it to home in Miami, when I think about my family's story, my mom was 6 months pregnant with me when Hurricane Andrew hit. It destroyed their home. My dad had a heart attack literally that month and wasn't able to work. He lost his business. Without a home and without a business, all of these different factors are interplaying. And I know that the trajectory of my life was altered. My home life, everything about that, growing up with like uncertainty, was informed in large part to the climate crisis, right? And so now in Florida, and now specifically in Miami and South Florida, we're looking at like what the science is telling us is clear. The sea level is rising. We have issues with the fresh water being pushed out of our aquifers. These are all issues of equity. The wealthier people are going to be able to leave, and the poor people are not going to be able to. And especially when you think about the history in South Florida, and I'll end it with this, about how the areas that people were pushed out of or unable to get because it was bayfront property, they were pushed into higher elevated areas like in Little Haiti and Overtown. And now that there's sea level rise, the areas that they were pushed into are the desirable ones because they're higher elevation, right? So it's like, hand in glove. You can't separate the two. It's the intersection. And that's why I think like something like a progressive perspective, the Green New Deal, really well addresses this, because it has addressing the industrial aspects of like the climate and how to move forward, but it emphasizes equity because of the legacy of the genocide of the indigenous people and slavery and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, thank you.
Nucleus?
Yes.
Nucleus, you want to comment?
Yeah, I can offer some words. I think it's important for us to define terms before using them. I don't want anyone to get lost in like jargon. So just taking a step back, intersectionality is a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 when she wrote a paper about housing discrimination and the way that resources were allocated to Black and brown folks. And it took on a definition of itself. It provided an analytical framework for understanding the combination between social issues and discrimination, right? So I think it's important to, lay that out before talking about, intersectionality as it relates to the current climate crisis. And it's important because you see this play out in the way that migration patterns take place as folks are being pushed from certain areas because of rising climate concerns, right? So largely Black and brown folks within particular areas are being, like gentrified based off of their response to the growing climate crisis. So it has a lot to do with it. And I really appreciate the question because, I think a lot of the times it's overlooked the role that these different intersections of, race, gender, political, I think that there's a lot that goes into it when we think about, different migration patterns and as folks respond to this. More affluent communities are, at a better position to deal with the looming crisis. But when you think of underserved or communities that are vulnerable, Black and brown communities tend to bear the brunt of this particular struggle. So I do believe that has a lot to do with it. And I really appreciate 350 for bringing this question forward, because I think it needs to be discussed as we, try to grapple with this current climate crisis. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Flore.
We want to hear from our guests. Anybody wants to really interject or share, or from the perspective of Angel that gives his testimonial of his mother migrating here while she was pregnant with a baby of 6 months. They have no home. Then that was his understanding and demonstration of intersectionality. Anybody? Glenda, you want to interject? Victoria?
Dr. Flore, I would like to say something.
We're gonna give you the mic, Commissioner, but because we always have interaction. Glenda, any feedback, any comment to Angel? Victoria?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I like to echo everything my co-panelists have mentioned. I really want to hone it home for everyone. Climate change impacts every aspect of your life, whether it's us intersecting issues or not. Climate change is a relatable issue, but because folks are just so boggled down with trying to survive, they can't connect the dots. So it's the job of us, every single one of us on this call, to help them get to that place, meet them where they are. So one wave that I like to coin in gender justice and climate change a lot. We are seeing more and more vector diseases here in South Florida. And one of those vector diseases is Zika. Public health and climate change, there's a direct interaction. There is a direct link, because we can see heat, the changes in heat, how that impacts our most vulnerable communities, which are our older folks who can't tolerate that heat. We're seeing women, especially women identifying individuals who are trying to conceive, taking more precautions because of, again, Zika. And them being exposed to other water vector diseases. Some of these individuals aren't privileged to be able to buy a plane ticket and live with their family members during wet season here in Florida, up in Connecticut, while many of us, knowing me, I can't just pack up and leave because of the responsibilities that I have here. Now I'm putting myself into a most vulnerable situation. And then we have lawmakers who are not giving us access to abortion care. If someone is who contracts Zika and is in a pregnancy right now, and then later on finds out that their lives are at risk, or their child is going to be born with an abnormality, it should be their decision on what their next steps are. So there we are able to link the issues of climate change and abortion care, or health care, as I like to call it. So us being on this call, we are talking to each other. We all worked in different sectors of the movement, but we really, really am urging a call to action for us to connect those dots. Green jobs. These green jobs are going to start formulating or start happening for folks in the labor union. How are we ensuring that our folks are getting those jobs, are getting those contracts, are at the table when these decisions are being made? Because they are happening already. There's stocks around renewable energy. There's employment around renewable energy, but those folks don't look like me. They're not coming to my neighborhoods to recruit folks like me. So it's super important that we continue to push that envelope. The Biden administration with migration, we're seeing more issues with migration here to the US. There's water wars in Africa, and food droughts and food insecurities in Ethiopia. And then we come down to South America, where we see those food insecurity problems, and they're migrating to the US. We have a president who has asked
to reopen a detention center. Not only is it inhumane to put children in cages, but it's also inhumane to put a detention center over an environmental waste dump. Not many people understand that that area is not deemed to be built on. It carries environmental issues that will harm individuals if they come into contact with either the soil or whatever the case may be. But so all of this connects. We as folks on this call need to be able to help folks connect those dots and intersect those issues.
Danielle?
Absolutely. If I could, include, this intersectional, how this relates intersectionality with people even around the globe and with genders, with class, with all of those things. One talking point that I've been hearing so much in response to climate change and environmental justice, one very troubling talking point that is so prevalent is there are just too many people on the planet. There are too many people on the planet. Some of us have got to go, and that's the only way that we can solve this, climate catastrophe, food insecurity, water insecurity. And that is absolutely a terrifying thing to hear. And it is so prevalent. It's prevalent among conservative, it's prevalent among liberals. A lot of people genuinely think that our climate, our environmental, and our food security issues are a matter of population. And that is simply not true. And that is contributing, a lot of people don't realize, to this new issue of eco-fascism, which is basically, this will play a huge role in immigration crises and in how we respond to this globally. An example, Nancy mentioned public health. And right now we're going through this huge pandemic. And I think Angel mentioned infrastructure, that wealthier people are going to be able to respond and they're going to be fine, but it's for working class people, minority people who are going to have to bear the brunt of this. And that is an example right now with this pandemic. Wealthy people are responding perfectly fine to this pandemic. And who it's affecting the most are minorities, more vulnerable people, working class people. And on a global scale, there's been an issue of access to technology. And that is something that is going to be a huge problem with responding to climate change, as it is right now a huge problem with responding to this virus. Right now, a big inhibitor of responding to this virus is capacity. A lot of countries don't have the capacity to vaccinate or produce vaccines as much as they need to, not even the US. Even in the US, we had a problem with producing enough vaccines in time to expeditiously vaccinate our own country, much less the world. And what's happening right now is a lot of multinational corporations, pharmaceutical corporations, they're basically holding on to these patents that were publicly funded with tax dollars, but they're not allowing other industries, or not other industries, other companies, other countries access to this information that was funded with tax dollars. They're not allowing other countries or other companies to produce these vaccines, which are, instrumental in, bringing this pandemic to an end. And it will be the same thing with climate change. As we respond to climate change, even industries like Bill Gates. Right now, Bill Gates owns 50% of all agricultural land in this country. And we previously mentioned that agriculture is one of the largest contributors to climate change. So when you think about intersectionality and how it all relates is, minority people, working class people who have, the knowledge, who have the ability to really change what's happening in our own communities, in our own, countries, we will not have access to that technology. We will not have the rights to do those things because ultimately, these big industries, the pharmaceutical industries, the agricultural industries, they do not, it's not a democratic process. So for all the different stakeholders, all the various stakeholders, women, minorities, working class people, immigrants, we don't have access to those resources. And that's the thing with intersectionality. It's the ability for all of our varying, communities to have access and have the right to implement those changes that we need in our communities, instead of hoping that, you know, this one person will be gracious enough to understand our issues, to respond to our issues. We can respond to our own issues, but we do need the resources, we need the access, we need the ability to do that. And we're seeing that play out catastrophically right now.
I received feedback from members of LCA reminding us that that there is also like a debate with Coral Gables candidates, but they insist for this to be recorded because they appreciate it. Then Danielle, not Danielle, Nicole, are we ready for the next question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your answers. So Angel touched upon this subject already. So the question is, what can we do to protect marginalized communities that are being forcefully pushed out, like Little Haiti, by wealthier communities looking to take advantage of the higher ground to avoid floods and other effects of climate change that have been affecting their properties? Climate gentrification.
Danielle, because you're the one who ended with the lack of access and resources, then why don't you take that question?
Absolutely. Gentrification right now, growing issue, even here in Chicago. I've been here now for almost 2 years. And just today I saw that the City Commission passed a new policy that's going to fine developers for demolishing structures. So for single family structures, they're gonna have a fine. For multifamily apartments, demolishing those things, they will have a fine. And that is, I guess, an attempt to prevent the destruction of, you know, already existing and affordable housing, and to prevent the replacement of these, you know, accessible properties with, you know, expensive luxury or investment properties, which is something that's just burgeoning right now. And honestly, it's going to just take a lot of bravery and a lot of integrity from, you know, our community leaders, our politicians, and our policymakers, because the only issue with gentrification, the only reason that it is an issue, again, it just goes back to access, where people in their own communities should have access to the property in their communities. It shouldn't be, you know, owned and determined by outside investors. And then, you know, all the people who actually live there, well, we just have to find a way to deal with that somehow. You know, when you're losing your housing, you're losing access to your property. And so we do need to come up with firm laws. You know, one policy that I totally support is, you know, rent controls. A lot of developers, their big incentive is, okay, I'm going to go into this neighborhood, you know, all this existing housing, affordable housing, it's so affordable, I can just buy it all up, knock it all down, build some luxury condos, and make a ton of money from, you know, inflating rents. And they will have that incentive as long as we do not implement policies like rent control or other development regulations to ensure that people in those communities have access and affordability of those properties.
That help us go straight to the next topic, which is housing. Then to be fair, we are asking one more time our participant, as we closing the topic of climate change, do you have any reaction, feedback? Commissioner, I'm gonna connect you with Danielle. Danielle, Commissioner Metayer would like to see that resolution. Then I'm gonna connect you. Then you can share with that resolution. Then Eric, any feedback? Karen, you know, before we move with that segue to housing. Okay, Anna, you have a question? Anna?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do. I just wanted to comment that Adrian Montalvo, Madriz.
Angel Montalvo.
No, Adrian Madriz is developing a building of low-cost housing in Liberty City, but he's doing it with all kinds of contributions from the community, and he really got a lot of input from them, and they are on his board of directors, and they are helping to establish the building, and I think that's wonderful.
That's good. Okay, very good. Taylor, Eric, any feedback before we move to housing? The beauty of this forum is that you guys are the leader. Eric?
Michael has his hand up.
Okay, Michael?
Yes, I think that, on my video went off. Anyway, I think that the only way to move people into action is for bad things to happen. Like if the hotels on Miami Beach get flooded, they'll do something. On Brickell Avenue, if they get flooded, they'll do it. In Fort Lauderdale, where I live, in Las Olas, if they get flooded, they'll do something. Something bad has to happen. And to let them know, really, their beautiful homes that are $1 million homes on Las Olas Boulevard are being flooded. That's the only way to force them into action. And that's why they're trying to buy up here in Fort Lauderdale, anything on Pine Island Ridge Road, which is the highest part of Fort Lauderdale. And as you said, Little Haiti is a high point in Miami. So unfortunately, these people will not listen. We have to get them called to action by, unfortunately, bad things happening. I hope that President Biden gets his message across that we need to do things on the environment. But in order to get it done, we have to take away the filibuster and try somehow force Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema to come across, do something for them, or threaten them with some bad things happening to Arizona or I forgot where Joe Manchin lives, but
West Virginia.
It has to be forced. All right.
Okay, good, good. Next, we're moving to housing. Ed and his
Dr. Flore, can I say one thing before we go to housing?
Yes,
one more thing.
Yes.
I just want to close this out with the conversation around climate change. I can do something now. We're currently in legislative session. You currently are connected to your local elected officials. I hope you are. I'm not saying federal legislation is not important, but we definitely need to push this conversation on a local and state level, being that we live in Florida. I just really want to share quickly some legislation that you all should be paying close attention to that can help us and help our communities. Senate Bill 1718, which I was signed on a letter from the Solar United Neighbors to support. This bill would allow power purchasing agreements for solar projects in Florida. As you know, FPL is a monopoly, and this is something that we need to ensure that solar energy comes to our state. Also encourage your local electeds to repeal preemptions restricting local repeal House Bill 1563 and Senate Bill 1348, which would restrict the local governments from plastic bans and styrofoam regulations in their cities, because we know preemption is an issue here locally that impacts us all. And also reach out to your local representatives and tell them to urge our legislature to have the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to update its 11-year-old plastic ban report, because the conversations are the reason why we're not addressing our plastic issue here in the state is because there's an outdated report and we're waiting for it. So let's encourage them to do that this session, along with all the other environmental issues that we're facing here in South Florida: flooding, infrastructure, the Sadowski Fund, really use those funds for affordable housing and et cetera. So that is something that we all can work on right now.
Commissioner, let me see if we got that right for our article. Then you said when it comes to legislation, you mentioned Senate Bill 1718. You said that one is a good one because it's about taking away the leadership of Florida Power Line and also welcoming the Solar United Neighborhood. Okay, so
Yes, welcoming solar. Solar.
But you said also that we need to repeal Senate bill. I didn't get the number.
Yeah, so repeal House Bill 1563 and Senate Bill 1348. This is basically preemption that is in place right now from local governments from passing plastic bans and bans and styrofoam.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner. Any reaction to Commissioner ideas of call to action?
Can I just say something?
To your elected officials? Okay, now we're gonna go to housing and
Wait, Ed Cook will always have something.
Angel.
No, Angel, that is coming straight to you because it's gonna be on housing. Then we from Ed Motivation, he shared that 18,000 people are being evicted right now and mainly are seniors. Why? Angel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I cut out for a little bit. Could you repeat the question?
Okay. Doing motivation today, Ed shared that about 18,000 people are being evicted, and among them are seniors. Mm-hmm. Why is housing so much? He used 18,000, but I know it's way much more people being evicted. Then why is housing is so much a crisis? Comparing to climate change, it seems that housing is greater. Is that so?
Well, okay, so like we were speaking about before, thank you for the question. These are all really great. I'm so happy for this dialogue. Yes, there's an intersection. I don't want to go into like what's bigger or worse, because like when I think about the issues that are affecting people in South Florida, housing is a huge one. I think it's like an immediate one, but if we don't deal with the climate, we're just going to have an exponentially worse problem. So for me, this I'll say, and this kind of speaks to a comment that somebody said about like something bad happening. We have to understand what that means when something bad happens, right? Usually who is affected? We're talking about elderly people like seniors, our fellow residents. We're talking about individuals with disabilities, who elderly people tend to have disabilities, right? We're talking about minorities, right? So yes, it is a huge issue. And I'll just share a little bit, even before the coronavirus, I've done canvassing with the Miami Tenants Union, right? And for me, this is a spiritual practice in the sense that I think that we need to understand that unless in the inside we really feel what's going on, and to our residents and our neighbors, we won't understand. We won't have the fire to go out into the communities. So it's an issue that when I would talk to people in the Pork and Beans and in Alberta Heights and all these places where I would talk to people, a lot of them like elderly women who would have a hole in their ceiling, and the landlord would tell them that they wouldn't fix it because they're going to demolish the house, and then those people leave, and then the next person gets the same cycle, right? I had elderly folks who didn't have air conditioning because of the lack of electricity, and they have conditions where they need that in order to live. We have people who don't have access to a home that's adequate to their physical ability, right? So if you are an elderly person and you need to climb a flight of steps, these are like a lot of things that that we don't think about, because again, these are marginalized communities. They're not in the forefront of what's going on. So it's really important to, kind of tying back, like each of us has a responsibility to each of us because we have to take care of each other. They're not going to take care of us. So even something as simple, maybe you don't run for office, but you start to canvass your neighborhood. And, obviously right now with COVID, things are a little bit more complicated, but I was with the Miami Workers Center canvassing people on the issue of the evictions. There was a statewide eviction on moratorium which the governor revoked. And because of that, now the onus is on renters to submit a form that they might not even qualify for. And most of the times they have no knowledge that it exists from the CDC. So that's something that we can all start to do. Tell your friends about it, engage with local efforts like that to educate yourself, because it is such an extreme issue. So yes, it is, and there are ways to get involved. And I urge every single one of you to like take a look at yourself and think about every time you drive in Miami, there are people who are being evicted. There are people who are living in living conditions where they have black mold, where they have flooding, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Nucleus, in your fight in the community, give us 3 reasons why housing is so much a crisis. 3 reasons.
Okay, well, thank you for the question. I guess if I can start naming the 3 reasons. Number 1 would be the lack of the inability of the Miami-Dade Board of County Commissioners in order to pass enforceable community benefits agreements. So just a little background, in 2016, Commissioner Suarez introduced some legislation that would try to codify a practice. So right now, developers have a direct line of communication between commissioners, right? They give them money for campaign-related activities, and this tends to like buy votes. And the community is left out of the conversation. So Commissioner Suarez thought progressively in instituting these CBAs in order to codify a practice that would allow the community to give input as to particular proposed developments. It was shot down because of the lack of, I guess, language in the bill of who the community representative would be. So who would be the person to negotiate the terms and conditions of this legally binding contract between the developer and the community, right? And how this plays out. If you were to get a CBA encoded, so if a project were to hit $100,000, right? If that was the threshold needed in order to trigger the CBA, we would see things like affordable housing. We would see things like local hire requirements. We would see things like apprenticeship requirements. We would see a lot of things that would allow our communities to develop and prosper. But back in 2016, I suppose the Board of County Commissioners here in Miami-Dade thought otherwise. So I think that that's a premier reason why the housing crisis is the way that it is. In my fight, we've been involved in trying to get equitable development around Miami-Dade County. Like, these projects are gonna happen regardless. You know what I mean? Like, this is just something that's happening. So we might as well put in a rule, put in some standards by which developers have to play by these rules if they want to do business in our county, period. But the Board of County Commissioners decided to side with developers more than the community. But we really have to understand that elections have consequences, and it really depends on who we put into office that are going to really spearhead and champion these issues. So I think that if we were able to get a CBA in Miami-Dade County, if we were able to get equitable development across this county, we would see things change profoundly. But that's not the case. However, I'm very encouraged with this new board that's coming in. Maybe we will be able to reverse the tide and try to create a more leveled playing field for the developers to not be in the for the commissioners not to be in the pocket of developers, but for the developers to be responsive and very tuned into the needs of the community. They need our buy-in in order for them to do projects in things that would affect us. So I would say, to answer that question, a premier reason why the housing crisis is where it is the relationship between developers and folks in government. And this plays out by, you know, them giving them contributions. And it's a very toxic relationship. If you think about, you know, that number that you mentioned, Dr. Flore, earlier, there's a number of people that are going to be like evicted, and that this is like a real reality for people to grapple with. So it's just extremely frustrating, the fact that people could kick the can down the line for something that can codify a practice that would allow for communities to prosper, to have input, to have valid input about proposed developments that would take place in their communities. So I am just a bit frustrated about that. But I think that a premier reason why we are where we are is their inability to grapple with that issue. So I'm not trying to name names. You know what? Let me name names. So Commissioner Edmondson took issue with who would be the community representative at the time to negotiate this agreement. And the Board of County Commissioners kind of ran with this, and they, you know, struggled to grapple with who that would be. And to this day, that particular legislation is deferred to a date unknown, while communities, you know, are being harmed and not being able to reap the full benefits of something that would take place in their local communities. It's extremely frustrating, Dr. Flore, but I think, you know, to answer your question, that's a premier reason why we are where we are in Miami-Dade County with the housing crisis.
I asked you for 3 reasons, but I am very, very surprised that you nailed it with that reason that can make us reflect. Let me, generally as a facilitator, you don't have to give opinions, but I'm gonna follow my heart there. You nailed it so well that we need to really reflect. You said relationship of developers with our elected officials. You use also the word of community benefit agreement. But you know that CBA, it's in all communities, whether that it was a gentrification problem in Coconut Grove, Little Haiti, and Liberty City. Those 3 areas from 2016 to now, they're still in crisis. And they are exactly in climate change, intersectionality, and also we lost many, those commissioners retires. they retire. Then I still hear you say that there is hope, but let me nail something about some revitalization funds for Little Haiti, for example, where there is a board. Then I don't know who wants to reflect on it. You know, then Angel, are you aware? Danielle, are you aware that the crisis is so serious that
I remember hearing about that whole effort in Little Haiti to have those organizations help the community, to try to defend the community. But, you know, ultimately, you know, what it comes down to, and I guess this is a good time to bring up the point of another thing that we hear a lot is having a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, you know, we want to have a seat at the table. We want to have a seat at the table. But the reality is, as a regular individual, even having your, you know, little representative at that table, you still do not have any power over the discussion.
You are so correct. You are so correct.
You're at the table, but you are a spectator at the table.
Yes, they tell you what to do. And also when it's time for that seat at the table, they describe exactly the criteria. Once the money is available to be allocated, they will tell you that if you're not, if Nancy is a leader, but Nancy now is in Coral Gable, she has no say in Little Haiti. Dr. Flore has no say in Little Haiti. Even though we were there and fighting, when it's time to have a board and their board, as long as it called a trust, you are out.
And yeah, they set the criteria, and
They
then
set the criteria.
Ultimately, even if you have this discussion, if you have a true issue and you bring up that issue and you bring up your solution to that issue, you still don't have the power to implement your solution or community solutions, because they not only set the criteria for being at the table, but it's also they have they have a preordained plan that ultimately community members do not have the power to change. And so I think, when Angel mentioned the tenants union, I think that is an absolute one integral part of it. Another integral part of it is having rent control, because ultimately the incentive is the profit, the endless profit, unregulated profit incentive. They will demolish everything because they can, and they will make a lot of money doing it. So, having our seat at the table, ultimately we have no control over that. And they're, laser focused on that profit incentive. So having a tenants union that is officially recognized, having rent control. And I shared an article from the website The Appeal, which discusses tenants having the right to counsel. A lot of tenants do not have the right to counsel across the United States or in Florida. So that is a new issue that's being brought up, giving tenants the right to counsel. But, since I've moved to Chicago, when I started renting, I received a packet from the city. And in that packet, you get certain resources. And so that should become a policy that renters should receive a packet. And I think part of that packet should be information regarding a tenants union, should be information regarding the right to counsel. And then one policy that we need to have legislated is rent control. And that's the only way to have a say of any sort or any kind of power in the housing discussion.
Then that take me back to you again, Nucleus. You are labor. Then who will be taking the lead, Lorenzo, and having tenants union, Ed? Then the problems is there. We know of it. Then we are making suggestion for solution, not solution for us to ask for a seat at the table where they're gonna define the criteria that take us to social issues. Then that take us to leadership. Then I want to hear from you, Ed, from Lorenzo, and Nucleus first as labor. Then who will do tenant unions? Who will draft something like that? Who will go to the representative and will he ask for a bill on that? And Lorenzo, Ed, and we will finish with you, Commissioner Nancy Metayer, before we touch the homelessness tonight.
Right.
Go ahead, Nucleus.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think the work that's being done with as my fellow panelist Danielle mentioned, I think the work that's being done with the Miami Tenants Union is extremely integral to try to shift the conversation and the leverages of power as it relates to tenants and landlords. I think that it's extremely important to be outward facing with these issues. I think that, historically, it's always been antagonisms. It's always been class antagonisms of folks that have it, folks that don't. I think that the brushing together of these relationships, it's always been a very complicated relationship over the centuries between capital and labor. And I think that the work of the tenant union is integral because I think that, just thinking about areas of capital, I think that, landlords tend to look at tenants as cash cows that you could continue to extrapolate, capital from them. And not much has to be paid into conditions, but these antagonisms kind of play out with a lack of addressing issues that could address people's everyday lived experiences. And it shows up because, like, if I'm able to cut corners to get profit, like, this profit motive is always in the mind of the capitalists, and it's driving every single decision, and it may come at the cost of decent and proper housing for people that pay you, the people that make you who you are. You know what I mean? They would rather find areas to cut corners in order to increase the bottom, in order to decrease the bottom line and enrich their value. So I think that the work that the tenants union is going to be extremely significant in organizing and shifting a particular consciousness around these issues, because you start to think differently when you understand that you're the person that's paying the bills. You're the person that's making all of this possible, right? It's very empowering to think about those people that are organizing and starting to, let those people know that they have some real power, and it's not just, paying bills when they can, but it's the fact that, like, withdrawing that all at once completely shifts the conversation. It's more than just, somebody just venting to you, but it's actually a clear demand that can be made if everybody is on the same page with the funding source that is for this particular person. So I think that the work that's being done in relation to the broader labor movement and challenging capital always, I think it's paramount to addressing the current climate, the current housing crisis. And shout out to the Miami Tenants Union for taking over that work. I think that it's essential.
Lorenzo, any comment?
Yeah, they say, I start from the point that housing is a human right, and I have no qualms in defending that. Now, the thing is, we have been involved in, especially around the question of healthcare. Many of us have, we mentioned Jack Lieberman before. We have been going to congressional people, David Murkazil Powell, all these other people that are Democrats, that with the fact that Medicare for all is supported by most Americans, and they basically turn us around. They don't listen to us and continue supporting the same not anti-policies, but not complete policies that, as we are also asking in terms of this thing. My experience on this deal is we need to show power. We need to show power, and power in our realm is people. We need to show the tenants union, all these organizations that have been listed by Eric, that are working together, and including the Democratic Party, because there is a progressive wing in the Democratic Party, and that progressive wing in the Democratic Party can move things if we have other people to work with. And the thing is that housing is a serious crisis. It's a serious crisis, and we need to also expand the vision, because, for example, my wife is the president of the Homeowners Association, or was the president of the Homeowners Association, and the kind of things that you see in this Homeowners Association in the city are horrible, and these people are also a natural ally. People that are in the condos, that, how many times we have seen in the local TV all the corruption that goes on in these things. and these people are paying serious money to have a own a condominium, and then they seeing all these services that they were promised not being delivered. So what I'm trying to say is that we have the potential here of building a tremendous united front, and we should start considering it, because unless in all of these things, it's important not to get discouraged. We could have been discouraged many years ago with the Medicare for all. We are seeing now that most people in Congress, most people in the Democratic Party in Congress supporting Medicare for all. It are not only just the American people, also the people in Congress are supporting Medicare for all. And so basically, we work and to conclude, let me mention Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams, when she talked about the voting rights things, the work on the voting rights things, she made it very clear. It took a long time to develop the machinery that they put together. It took a long time. We cannot expect that we have a microwave type of deal that you know, so we're gonna hit the. We have to cook. We cannot expect that everything is gonna be microwave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Ed Cook.
No, Eric was ahead of me. I see his hand up there, and
okay, please, Eric.
I just have an overall closing comment.
Mm-hmm.
Eric.
Okay. Actually, yeah. I just wanted to make a comment as well. And first of all, this is a great forum, and thank you so much for hosting this. I posted in the chat, but I also, just wanted to say that with 350, we are helping to organize a citizen lobby day, or week actually, during the congressional recess, and we'd love to have all of you amazing leaders, participate in some way. We're having an organizing call about that on Sunday, and this is, to push Congress to adopt the Thrive agenda for climate, jobs, and justice. So if you're interested in getting on the organizing call and participating in the Citizen Lobby Week upcoming in the congressional recess, please post your email or send me your email in the chat, and I'll make sure that we get you that invite.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Juan, any feedback today? One good day?
Well, no, just thanking everybody. This was a great forum, and just wanted to comment. We have an LCA environmental committee that's headed by Gabe Ignetti, and you all are welcome to join. It's a lot of great exchange of information, and we are already working in some very good ideas. I will post the invitation for the next meeting, which is on April 6th, and you all are invited. But just really pleased with what I've seen today, and all these bright people that are pushing the envelope for all of our society. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with Commissioner Metayer, social issues that we cannot leave out, which is the homelessness. Then your take on it, because if housing is so serious, is that impacting? The homelessness is everywhere in Florida.
Yeah, I think homelessness is a huge issue, and it's also tied in with mental health, access as well, because a lot of our folks, not only who are homeless, also are facing a lot of mental health issues, and they're not getting the resources that they need. It's also coupled with affordable housing. It's also coupled with how we treat our veterans when they come back home from active duty. So homelessness is just a really complex issue with a whole bunch of underlying concerns and things that we're not talking about, issues that we're not really having a real conversation about. So the best way for us, I believe, to combat homelessness is really to address those issues that I've listed: homelessness, how we treat our vets, and access to resources. How do we treat our older folks when they're unable to work anymore, but they can't, their social security is not supplementing them? So then what? We have a lot of those, we're seeing a lot of those issues here in South Florida. And until we, again, have these policies to really safeguard our vulnerable communities, we're just going to continue to run in this rabbit hole of, did the chicken lay the egg? What came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So it's super important for us to continue having these conversations, continue pushing for legislation, and continue voting people with our voting in people with the best, with our best interest in mind.
And that take me to you, Angel. We lost many seats in 2020. Social issues is the way we vote. Then this is our second forum. Do you think we're making progress with the messaging?
Oh, okay. Well, wow. There's a couple things that I wanted to talk about, and I'll try to be as quickly as possible to be able to address your question. Yes, we're making progress. Yes, we have a long way to go. I wanted to give you a little bit of an example, because this is something that really, I really care about, because it's like some of the most vulnerable people in our society, right? Like the whole idea of like out of the caste system, right? So we're talking about the criminalization of poverty, and this speaks to the whole thing about the elective issues, right? In locally, we have the Pottinger Agreement, which a judge struck down, and that, it's really interesting because it speaks to the legacy of racism and classism in Miami. When you think about the area right now where encampments are being destroyed, and I've been to one recently where they essentially say, we're either going to arrest you, we're going to institutionalize you and send you to the Red Roof Inn, or we're just going to take all your stuff and you send up on the street. And I've talked to people within the last few weeks who would rather be on the street than be institutionalized because of the lack of dignity that the kind of services that we provide for people in those situations. These are policy decisions, right? So, my perspective with this, and then I'll just lead into the question. People need basic necessities like food and a place to live before anything less critical, like getting a job, budgeting properly, attending to substance use issues. And this is what I'm reading from this idea of housing first, right? Okay. We have so many solutions to a lot of the issues. In fact, I believe that we have a solution to every issue that we have. Maybe we don't all know everyone, but the immigrant community knows what's best for them. The Haitian community knows what's best for them. Women know what's best for them. The problem is our representation does not actually represent us. So at one point, we have to recognize, I've done so much voter registration. I've done ballot initiatives. I've done canvassing for that. And I feel like we need to stop just asking people to register to vote, and we need to get people to start running for office. Because when the conversation earlier was about like
Daniela.
Right. So what I think is, somebody had mentioned earlier about like, they won't give us a seat at the table. Well, those people who are, preventing us, they can be voted out. Like, we could be where every single one of us, I mean, literally, mostly could be a commissioner in the city or the county. We could be a mayor. And until we start to open up our minds and really start encouraging young people, and really feeling like we need to step into our power. And I think as progressives, we have an opportunity. Right. We have an opportunity to contrast ourselves from people, especially even within the Democratic Party. And I say this as a leader within the Democratic Party locally, is that there is the element of corporatism and this idea of like money is more important than people. And, that needs to change. And I think that can change with a progressive movement that starts to run like local grassroots campaigns. Because at the end of the day, I've run in these, I'm not run of them. I've like volunteered in like local races, like city and county commissioners. Those are won by a small margin often. And then they have an incredible amount of power. So if we made concerted efforts to start training people, recruiting people who are local leaders, like Nucleus, for example, to run for these office, like, can you imagine? Like, then we wouldn't have to spend so much energy reaching out to them. They would be lobbying us. No longer do we have to worry about getting them to stop having a relationship to a developer because they are not developers. So that's kind of like tying in everything. And I just want to say we desperately need to talk about like the homelessness, because these are people that are being that violence is being committed to them on the regular. I was involved with the Miami Dream Defenders over the summer in the height of COVID, when we were trying to get people showers and bathrooms publicly. Recently, I spoke to a woman who was just about to turn 80 years old. She had a messed up hip and she had a broken arm that healed sideways. And because I've experienced how horrible it was trying to get people resources, like I felt so powerless and heartbroken, because I knew that even if I called the hotline, they weren't going to actually solve the problem. So in order to get those policies in place, we need to run our people, and we need to not just run, but we need to win.
We ending dialogue tonight and those notes. But now I want to acknowledge our partner tonight, Nicole, again, for her time, her organization, and ask her, because we never want nobody to be left out. Now I'm asking Nicole, Karen, Gabe, and Maya Preda, for your words. Anne, then you guys will be doing your inspirational perspective, because it's what does it mean to be a progressive. Then today it's that to admit that there are crisis in housing, that intersectionality, like Nucleus said, it's different than climate change, but there is a correlation. Being a progressive is taking action, is changing the rhetoric, like Angel said, is changing the mentality that money is more important than people, and have someone like Nucleus run for office, you know, than to train, to recruit, and be part of those kind of forum. Nicole, you first for your inspirational remark, followed by Anne, and Gabe, I didn't hear your voice, Karen, Pedra, and we will say goodnight to each other. Victoria, guys, come on, I will follow that you have your minute. Start with you, Nicole.
Thank you, Dr. Flore. I just want to say thank you to everyone, to LCA for organizing this, and Dr. Flore for hosting, and all the amazing speakers for your wonderful input. And like everybody said, we really hope to work together and create a progressive community. So thank you all.
Anne?
Don't really have anything to add. This was a wonderful forum. You guys,
Victoria?
all are good speakers.
Victoria?
Thank you, everybody. It was a really great forum. And I just posted something in the chat about what Republicans are planning to do with the federal money that was earmarked for homelessness and for people unable to pay their rent. The feds have given us a bunch of money, but the Republicans in this state not planning to use it for what's been given to us. So this was actually in Miami Herald today, so I put it on the Facebook page. So everybody should read up on it. But thank you. It was a very good, great. It was a great session.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, Maya Preda, we want to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see everybody here. Thank you for organizing this. I'm a climate activist, mostly working with the city of Miami, and we're gonna need more people power to get the city of Miami to act on the climate emergency, and I hope that we can find it here and through the network with all the good people here and everywhere.
Thank you. Karen, she wrote in the chat. She says that it was a great forum. Thank you all for your insight. I look forward to the next one. Gabe, you are the leader in the environmental and climate change for LCA. Any comments?
Well, was a great forum. It was a great forum. I really, I'd like to hear us deal with the intersectionality of the social justice issues connected with climate, especially fossil fuel workers, which are not our enemies. Their jobs are, unless we deal with the problem that they have, that they're losing their jobs is an existential crisis due to the shift in climate change and how we protect them. I think that's a very important issue, that needs to be spoken about too sometime.
Okay. Ed, I saw your hand and you're the last one, and Nucleus Board of Labor will say something. And once again, I want to thank Danielle Robinson from Chicago, Nucleus Commissioner Metayer, and next sessions and forum for the year will be in June, before July 4th, the last week of June. It's gonna be on white supremacy. Please, guys, if you know anyone, I know Lorenzo gonna be part of it. Brian Hernandez has to be part of it. I'm looking for 2 great speakers, people who really know the topic, that can really stay within that understanding of being a progressive. Then please recommend to me. We'll work with them because we record this. We want people to learn from our forum. LCA took the lead this year, and because we want people to not call us fellow Democrats socialist, but progressive, and really understand that when we use the term, that we know how to measure it in labor and education and housing and the different topics. Nucleus, any comments as we wrap up?
Yes, I would just like to thank the Labor Community Alliance and you, Dr. Flore, for putting on this excellent forum. I thought it was extremely insightful. I am looking forward to the discussion that's going to take place going forward. And I just, well, I guess I could just end by saying solidarity forever. I mean, across, all these different issues, I think it's really important that, for me, what it means to be a progressive is building a broad coalition across an intersectional view of our collective struggles. So thank you, everybody, for being on the call tonight. And thank you for moderating, Dr. Flore.
I took note, building a broad coalition across all the intersectional
view of our collective struggle.
Yes, you. Okay, you will text me that sentence because you need to take credit for it and I don't want to mess it up. Then thank you guys, and much love from LCA. Angel, thumbs up. Guys, get busy, and looking for recommendation for our June forum. Ed, did I leave you out? It seems that you...
Yes, it'd be better if I left out, because I'm throwing a stink bomb into the whole thing. And I'm saying this, hey, as you go to bed tonight, there's a hurricane coming, there's a tsunami coming, there is an earthquake coming, and it's called the 80% advantage that the Republicans have in the legislature. And those are the things we should be addressing. We should have come together with some action that really, the best thing that was, there were words, Lieberman would have loved them. Nothing happens unless something happens to them. I heard none of that tonight. I sat through a couple of days ago, the Democrat executive committee or something, and the big thing, and they couldn't even at the end, they did all the bureaucratic reports of their group. And at the end, anything for the good of the order. The next day, the Congress was dropping the $15 a year, $15 an hour thing. They didn't even say, hey, let's at least have a strike and demand $10 now. We'll talk about that. I had sat through tonight's Labor Caucus, and I heard the head of the vice president of the teacher union say we have 30,000 people and they're going to take our salaries and turn them into 401ks. And you know what the problem is, that you won't be guaranteed a pension. There, you might benefit, but you are not guaranteed a pension under the new system that their monies, if the state goes bankrupt. But he asked for the other unions out of wherever they were to help them. I'm saying, come on. Why wasn't there something tonight or any of those groups saying, hey, we got to stop what's up there and make something happen to them? Get all the bus drivers in the states or just in Dade County to go on strike. Get all the teachers. Well, they're at home. Get all the longshoremen to 1 day, 2 day strike and pick out 2 bills that you really want. This one that Brian talks about, 42,000 people without electricity means that kids can't use computers to go to school. Where's that dynamism? Where's somebody talk? Where's that energy? No, they're all talk. And when you talk Medicare for all, hey, narrow it down. Pick out one place where you can really win. Dental care for all, basic dental care for everybody. If you begin to needle in on that point, we'll win. And we just have to bust the dental association as a side. I didn't hear that Lieberman talk. I guess I throw me out. I don't deserve to be with you.
Anyway, yes, you heard it, and the voice of Angel Montalvo telling you that we need to stop putting money over people. And I think Jacques had a shirt like that. You heard it, and the voice of Danielle Robinson telling you about sea level in the Caribbean, telling you, and the voice of Nucleus telling you that we need to build broad coalition across all intersectional view of our collective struggles. The struggles are there. We're gonna continue addressing them. Thank you all for your time.